Hey friends, in today's video I'm going to talk about the Season 20 PvP meta because I need to get this video out of the way before I start talking about builds and whatnot because I'm always going to reference the meta. So what is it? Obviously if we're talking weapon meta, the Immortal SMG is at the top, but I want to get a working definition here for meta. If I talk about the absolute best under perfect circumstances, someone in the comment section is going to say, well, that doesn't apply to an average player, so I'm going to try to meet you in the middle somewhere and say that if I'm going to talk about meta, it's got to be low risk, high reward, somewhat easy to execute. We can break down the meta into two distinct parts, weapon and then class/team composition, and this is always decided based on the map, mode, and player count. So let's cycle back to weapons and talk about the Immortal. Why is the Immortal SMG so good? It has great range, a fantastic TTK, and for the most part, it is easy to use. So 25.5 meters, 0.67 TTK, and of course target lock adds to the ease of use because you don't necessarily have to hit all heads to still get a pretty fast time to kill. Not to mention, the maps contribute to the SMGs. There's a lot of cover around the map that is maybe 2 slides away from being an SMG distance at almost all times. There are some exceptions, and when those exceptions come up, the SMG players pivot to no time to explain. Those are the two distinct ranges in the meta. Of course, Destiny isn't just played with primaries, there's also special weapons and abilities. When paired with an SMG, you see a shotgun or a sniper most of the time. However, I've been talking to my fusion rifle friends, and they have been having an absolute feast right now because everybody is in the fusion rifle's lethal range. But overall, point blank, you want to obviously have a shotgun, medium distance fusion, and long sniper, although what you'll find out is you don't have to be far at all to use the sniper at the high level. So elimination game mode is very dominated by sniper rifles to the point where it starts to bleed into the, let's say, class meta, where you have to play really safe around sniper rifles. But we'll talk about that later. For now, all you have to know is abilities and special weapons are the first thing used, and then the SMG cleans up, and that can yield around a 30-meter kill. Once you go beyond those 30 meters, that is when we get into no time range. And no time range is, 36 meters? And no time users typically use it all the way almost to 50 meters. You might have noticed that I specifically say no time range and just not pulse rifle range. That's because the no time exotic trait is still very influential at a high level. A no time user's goal isn't to get the pick, it's to play a grind game to build up the perk. And the perk adds to the ease of use and lethality and artificially pushes out the range just a little bit more. So that's what contributes to no time dominating that specific range. The thing about no time and sniper rifles is you don't have to use them at their intended distance. You can still use it point blank, and it still does very well. So continuing on, if we stretch our range even farther away, then we have to use a scout rifle or a bow. And the dominant bow is Lemon Arc. The dominant scout rifles, I think, are the 150 RPMs belonging to Jade Rabbit and Polaris Lance. These rock a 0.8 time to kill, which is not too shabby at the distance and can still catch sniper rifle players off guard. And that covers the main threats at those 3 distances. Everything else is slightly in between or in this awkward spot where you have to play a specific playstyle instead of just playing the game like you would with those other weapons. For example, hand cannons, you can't just run around the map and use them. You have to glue yourself to cover and team shot for hand cannons to be as effective as SMGs, generally speaking. Another example is sidearms, which are surprisingly more lethal than SMGs. They just have a more confined range space that starts to get dominated by shotgun swap cleanup. But if you can play around that sweet spot of around 15 meters and backpedal as the shotgunner approaches, if the map allows for it, then the sidearm is going to be the best choice for that. I'm going to rope last word into here too. I think it sports a 0.5 TTK with the 3-shot. And then something like Drang is a 4-shot for a 0.6. So both very competitive. And you're probably not going to be able to tell that difference in the heat of battle. When we talk about the class and team meta later, remember that I talked about Drang and Last Word because they have some, let's say, build crafting things to consider that may make them a better or equal choice to SMGs. But like I said with my working definition, it has to be easy to use, low risk, high reward, and out of all the things I've talked about, the SMG and No Time to Explain are just effective out of the box and you don't really have to think about it. Moving on, let's talk about special weapons. I already said fusion rifles were really good. I want to say grenade launchers are probably the best, but nobody uses them for gentlemen's agreements or something like that, so it doesn't surprise me that we're not going to see them climb up the charts. This might be another case of absolute meta versus what's realistic to the masses, but I still think grenade launchers are very, very dominant. If you play against a good grenade launcher user, you know nowhere on the map is safe. There is no distance where you're not going to get splashed for 120 damage and then shot from the side. Anyhow, moving on. Shotguns, if we're talking specific, what is the best archetype of shotgun? Then I would say the precision frame, like the Matador 64. Or if it's a farmable week, or if you just want to do Dream and City reset, you go for the Retold Tale with Quick Draw, which also does work with the seasonal artifact, which I am going to take into account this time when I talk about the meta because it's so unavoidable to accidentally take some beneficial artifact perks. If you want a shotgun that's good out of the box, then go for Duality. Its hipfire is better than Matador's aim down sights. And then if you aim down sights with Duality, you get a slug mode. So I do think it's the best, even if you can somehow get beyond 80 handling on another shotgun. I still think it's the best, except when I talk about the class and team meta later, there is going to be an exception that makes Conditional Finality the new raid shotgun that has both stasis and solar elements to it. That one I think is not just the best shotgun in the game, borderline the best weapon in the game because of a balance oversight that I think we have yet to see abused in the meta. If you want to go the slug shotgun route, if you're a hunter, go chaperone because it gives you a lightweight bonus. And other than that, I think you go for the heritage from Deepstone Crypt with the offhand strike perk to get those intense hip fires that rival chaperone range. And the energy slot, just feel free to use any slug. They're all pretty similar. I'm not going to make fusion rifle recommendations. Just watch Legalo Flash's video. Sniper rifles now. Depending on what zoom you like, snipers are really personal. Some feel great to some and terrible to others. So, if I had to say out of the box, you go for the King's Fall sniper, or you throw on Cloud Strike or Borealis. Do not sleep on Borealis. It is really good. And if you see a lot of Cloud Strikes, that's because at freelance, a lot of people choose Cloud Strike because it can kind of just win the round on its own sometimes, because when you don't communicate, sometimes people are not aware that if they res, they are going to get colladed. Whereas in a organized environment, you just tell your teammate, hey, don't revive me, he has a Cloud Strike, and then it never happens. Beloved is still good. I think a lot of people are sleeping on 1,000-yard stare. That one is really good, but a little harder to obtain. Actually, I don't know how you get Beloved anymore, if it's craftable or whatnot. If Iron Banner's around, trust me, controller players, Occluded Finality aims itself. We are lucky that he has never sold a god roll of that, otherwise I do think it would start topping the charts. Of course, there's the other special weapons and exotics I didn't mention. A lot of them do have their place, but they're just not out of the box, don't think about it good, so I'm not going to go into it. Okay, now that we know what your weapon arsenal somewhat looks like, let's talk about the team/class composition in 6v6. In the rare case that you get 6 really good organized players against another 6 really good organized players, you're going to notice that most of their team is Titans and Warlocks, and Hunters rarely participate there. It's not because they're bad, it's because their kit is more beneficial to 3v3 in certain maps, and when you can't just switch characters when a certain map comes up, you just default to playing Titan and Warlock. Reason being is because Bubble, Well, and Missile is so abundant. I should talk about Arc Titan because I think that is at the absolute top of the meta, no matter what mode. It does not have a weakness. It has a good ability economy. Its class ability, the Barricade, it counters snipers, which are dominant in the weapon part of the meta. And you just put the wall up, look at the sniper. When they look away, you push up, play a different piece of cover, wait on your barricade, rinse, repeat. You throw a lightning grenade on an adjacent wall to flush them out into your engagement distance. You shoulder charge if you overextended back to your direction. It doesn't have a weakness. And then, worst of all, if you make it point blank against a shotgunner, you're supposed to lose as a Titan because they have a shotgun and maybe you don't. But because of melee lunge in this game, you teleport all over the place and somehow, due to Titan magic, you just win anyway. And yes, I'm throwing Ophidians in here too. It's the same thing. Warlocks bring a different role to 6v6 and 3v3. The Rift allows them to recover health, which helps with tempo. That basically means that in most cases, your damage output is better than what damage your team receives, which allows you to push up and continually push the enemy back and choke them out with getting new angles. It's very beneficial. Yes, Hunter Dodge lets you survive something that would have been lethal, but having a rift that your whole team can revisit absolutely helps in the team fight. And the thing about Hunter Dodge is it's not really Hunter exclusive anymore. You have Icarus Dash, and yes, I'm saying Shoulder Charge is a dodge. It is. But you also have Thruster and Titan if you truly want the Hunter experience. So, yeah, you could just play those instead. So now when we talk about the new armor mod system, we lost 2 mods of Powerful Friends and Radiant Light, which I think Hunters took advantage of most, which let them build up pretty good stat splits. The thing about Warlock and Titan is you don't have to build into mobility at all. You just throw everything into resilience, whatever the competitive resilience is, which is 8 by the way. 8 counters Teraba, which is aggressive SMG. 7 counters aggressive SMG target lock. So that's what you want to hit, and both Warlock and Titan can hit that easily. Hunter has really no chance. You have to compromise somewhere. Okay, before the comment section gets out of control, let me say that the big winners of this expansion were definitely Hunters. If we're comparing the 3 new Strand classes against each other, it is not even close. Hunter is the best by far. Not the point of this video, but I'll summarize. Titan requires a kill. Warlock has 2 distinct paths that I feel the other subclasses do better. And then we have Hunter, which brings a new baseline of movement abilities to the game. And although they are on a long cooldown, you can build craft it in a way to finesse it or work with your team to finesse it. And that's a great segue here. What Hunters bring to the table is they offer their team a new strategy to break stalemates. That is why they're valuable. Okay, let's go back to 6v6. I'm going to say tier list off the top of my head. S tier, Arc Titan, Void Titan, Solar Warlock, Stasis Warlock. Then in A tier, there's a lot of different things, but I want to mention this is where Hunters start showing up. You have Lemon Arc Hunter anchoring in the back. You get hit by Lemon Arc, it's essentially getting sniped. And then also Young Ahamkaras is really, really good for zoning. And then I'm going to say Stasis Hunter's Dustfield is also really effective at controlling space. And then you also have the added benefit of playing very aerial and using Shatter Dive as a free peek. And again, just an extra dodge in the air, which is really, really good, even in 6v6, but more so in 3v3. After that, I would say the B tier, you start seeing Void Warlock, Arc Warlock, Stasis Titan, and then C tier, pretty much everything else I didn't mention. Although I would rope Strand Hunter, of course, in A or S tier, depending on the user. Still think it's too early to say, but once we start normalizing the advanced techniques of Strand Hunter, I think it's very easily going to earn a place in S. Alright, let's talk about the weapon meta around teams now. In general, you want to have around 3 to 4 SMGs with 1 to 2 medium-long range anchors. And what anchor means is that you're trying to sit back enough that the enemy team is not allowed to spawn on your side of the map, so you can keep the beneficial side of the map. In a lot of Destiny 2 maps, you prefer one side way over the other. So, if you're a long-range player, Polaris Lance or Jade Rabbit or No Time to Explain, everyone else, some combination of hand cannons or SMGs. Okay, now let's move into 3v3. This is where Hunters start earning their keep in the S tier. I think Invisibility as well as Gemini Jester is just always there. And I also think that Strand Hunter is there. and young Ahamkara's spine is also there for shutting down revives and whatnot. Stasis Hunter, preferably with Stompies, still definitely represented, just being able to be so agile, meaning it quickly changes direction, breaks ankles, shuts down areas with the Dust Field, as well as offers new verticality. I already said this, but it's especially apparent in 3v3. Hunter's definitely lost the most in this new armor mod system, but there is a silver lining, and I was talking about sidearms earlier, and this is where I circle back. So sidearms have a smaller aim down sights movement penalty than submachine guns. But Titans earn back that penalty, or rather that less penalty, by using Peacekeepers to artificially boost their mobility. Peacekeepers give an invisible 5 tiers to mobility, but the difference between the last mod system and this one is Titans are not hitting 5 mobility initially. They're hitting 2, 3, or 4, which translates to 7, 8, or 9 total mobility. And if we're looking at, like, I think it was in Drewski's video, 8 mobility is very similar to a Hunter with 10 mobility that is using a sidearm. Very similar strafe speed. So, Hunters, you have that if you want to tap into it. Okay, for those who have listened intensely for the last 16 minutes, thank you. Here's the secret sauce that isn't really much of a secret. This is the absolute meta that I'm surprised I don't see every single game. And that is Antaeus Ward with a fusion rifle, but then someone's going to correct me and say the conditional finality shotgun on the stasis mode freezes through the Antaeus Ward shield. And so then you think to not run Antaeus Ward, just run conditional finality. When the real answer is you can just run both. You can run conditional finality and Antaeus Ward to counter other people doing the exact same thing. So I think the future meta is going to boil down to jousting wars with conditional finality and Antaeus Ward, and if you hit it, they're done. If you don't, you shoulder charge out and you try again another day. As we start to see more players abusing that meta, I think we're going to appreciate slow dust fields, glacier nades, the strand dive suspend ability, as well as Telesto and Waveframe grenade launchers. However, none of those will beat the original, which is Antaeus Ward with a fusion or conditional finality. So I hope Bungie hits that preemptively before it gets out of control, because I feel like it's a ticking time bomb, and it seriously, it's just a matter of time before we see 3 Antaeus Titans on every Trials team. Speaking of being proactive, preemptive, whatever, let's talk about the artifact for a second. Before Firebolt Scorch was nerfed, those were definitely S tier, and I'm here to report they're still S tier. You're not getting ignitions, but the frequency at which you can throw firebolts that scorch and keep that recovery down, that alone is enough. And I'm not surprised, because every season something broken that ruins the PvP experience is in the artifact, and we say it every time, it's too much, and then they dial it back at some point in the season. Can we just skip that step for once, please? Okay, so I mentioned Titans. Antaeus Ward is going to be the looming future. What is Warlocks? I think it's going to be double grenade launcher if people are really annoyed enough. You're going to use Rain of Fire, Fighting Lion, and another special grenade launcher. You're just going to keep throwing them down the hall, because why would you ever try to one-on-one fight with Antaeus Ward? What is Hunter's future meta? Strand Hunter, and it's still Invis. I don't know exactly how they're going to do the exotics there. Stompies could be good. I don't know about this leaked exotic changes in the future, but we'll play it by whatever happens. I'll adapt. And I think this is a great ending point for the video. So if you've listened to my rambling up until now, you should have a great understanding of what are the most powerful weapons in the sandbox and when should you use what is good in each mode, and what is the future meta that y'all will be disappointed to play Trials against.
You're not having fun, Drew. A good old golly time.
The Willikers. Where is that?
In the middle.
I want to fight it.
There are days when even the Vanguard gets sloppy. Not like you. You have iron focus.
Double special user on top.